Alright, so we talked already about adjustment layers and blending options and some of those things. So I'm going to actually, instead of just showing you what they are, actually show you sort of what my process is. Now, is this going to work best for you? Maybe yes, maybe no. That's kind of up for you to figure out what works with your style. So I'm going through some photos here. Let's find one that I want to work on for right now. I think this will work actually. Or maybe I've got several of these, so I have to figure out which one I think is best. I think I'm gonna go with one of the close-ups. So let's try this one. I typically open them up before actually deciding to kind of see, does it look like it's the best one? Does it look like it's in focus? Does it look like it focused on the right area? And hopefully not like the grass right behind or right in front of it. And I have this raw editor here, and it can do a few things that you may or may not be able to do depending on if you're opening it in RAW or not. Now, you can open this even if you're running a JPEG, but it's not as effective. And depending on what sort of camera you're shooting on, you may or may not have the capability to shoot in RAW. If you do, I recommend you use it. And so there's just a bunch of different options that you have here that you can play with, including like adjusting for lens distortion and stuff based on which camera, which lens you're running, stuff like that. But anyways, you might not have access to this, and that's not really my main goal for right now, so I'm going to go ahead and actually just open it the way it started directly from the camera. So here we go. Here's our water buffalo. Let's get rid of that timeline, and let's make this a little bigger, and we'll just zoom in, Command plus or Command 0 to get it to fit to the screen. I'm a pretty big fan of Command 0. I like to often make it a little bit smaller than I want, shrinking my window, then hitting Command 0, and then making my window a little bit bigger, so I have a little bit of border around it. That's just my preference. So I have my adjustment layers here, which we've talked about previously, and I often start with levels, and I'll just kind of move these around until I get an area that I'm happy with. I often like to brighten it a little bit, increase the contrast a little bit. In the previous video, we also talked about how when you add an adjustment layer, it automatically gives you a quick mask as well. And we're going to use that. I'm going to start with it being all black. So I've just grabbed my paint bucket and I've just thrown all black across that quick mask. Then I'm going to go in with a paintbrush and paint white the areas that I want it to actually affect, to make it so that affects just the water buffalo himself and not everything else. Now I have hue and saturation, and I can adjust the saturation, make it a little bit more colorful, but not too much. And once again, I'll go in here and just have it affect just a little bit of it. Kind of want it to affect just sort of the foreground and the background because it feels like they're not quite the same. They feel a little imbalanced to me. So I'm also going to go in here and create a black and white layer. I'm just going to hit auto here, and then let's change the blending option to luminosity. And if I don't quite like it, or if I'm not quite sure about it, I can move those sliders around a little bit, and it will affect which parts are brighter or darker. I'd say give it a try if you haven't before. And if I switch layers, and I play with blending options a little bit, you can see kind of how it affects it, and you can figure out which one you think is best for the current photo and your current process. Now, I don't necessarily do all of these to every single photo, but these are generally the things that I do, more or less. It's going to change a little bit from photo to photo, but these are typically the ones that I play with and see if I like how it looks. I don't quite like how the black and white is affecting all of it, so I'm going to make a few little changes here and there. I think I really want the black and white layer to really more affect the grass than the water buffalo himself. Now I think I'm going to add sort of a slight colorized effect using a hue and saturation adjustment layer. I don't want it to be all the way. I mean, I was playing with it where it was really strong, but I can drop some of these values down, adjust some of the blending options, and I like kind of how that's looking. So you can see the difference there. Just gives it a little more warmth to it, which I like. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this layer and drag it to the top. So here's my original. You can see the changes I've made so far. Now I'm going into Other and High Pass. And it's going to make it look weird, but just trust me. Move this up a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I'm going to change this to Overlay. And you can see that it just makes everything look a bit sharper. Now you have to be careful. You do it too much, it's not going to look great. I'm also going to throw a quick mask on here because I don't want it to make everything sharper. I don't really want the grass sharper, or definitely not the blurry areas on the foreground and background at the top and bottom. I'm going to make everything black, and I'm just going to add white on the quick mask to the areas of the water buffalo himself, because that's the part, that's the subject, that's what I want in focus. So I've just dragged another layer up here, and I'm going to do Overlay again, drop the opacity a bunch. I like that just a little bit better. It's a slight adjustment, but I think it helps. And we'll drag another one up again, and now you can see the difference. So we're getting there. Yeah, I think I like it better. I think it's good. So let's add in a brightness and contrast. I'm going to bring the contrast down a little bit. I've really been liking not super strong contrasts lately. So once again, I'm going to make this quick mask black as well. I'm going to go in with my paintbrush and color in some areas that I want it to affect, just to kind of decrease the contrast in some of those really dark areas, because I didn't want it to affect the whole thing. That's looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit. No, I think we're good. And we'll go ahead and save it. I'm not going to save it on my card because I don't want it to replace the original. Just create a new folder onto my desktop. And I'll just drop it into there. If I leave it a Photoshop file, I'll keep the layers. If I switch to a JPEG, it's a little bit more standard, but I lose the layers. So it depends on what I want to do. If I plan on editing it later, then keep the Photoshop file. If I don't, then I can make it into a JPEG, which will be great for uploading to Facebook or Instagram or wherever. But I never save over the original, because if I want to go back and edit the original again later, if I don't have the option, well, hopefully I really liked what I did to it, because that's it then. So I always keep my original. And here you can see the new one that I made. And you can see that all my layers are gone, because, once again, the JPEG. But I think it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. If I zoom in, you can see it looks pretty nice. Good level of sharpness. Not super duper sharp. I think I was actually in a moving vehicle when I took the shot. But it is what it is. And it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I mean, I'm zooming way in to critique it, to analyze it. So, pretty happy with it overall.